ಲಾಸ್ಟಿಗೆ ಅಡ್ವರ್ಟೈಸ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಡ್ವರ್ಟೈಸ್ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಪಾಟಿಫೈ ಚೊಕ್ ಲೈವ್ ಒಂದದ್ ನೋಡಿ ನೀನ ಬಾ ನಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಲಿಂಕ್ ನೀನ ಚೊಕ್ ಅಡ್ವರ್ಟೈಸ್ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಡೆಸ್ಕ್ಟಾಪ್ ಬಟನ್ ಆಡಿಯೋ ಆನ್ ಅದ ನೋಡಿ
It's a new Express app. And then at the very bottom, I'm going to do app.listen, and I'm going to be listening on port 3000, and I'm going to add my callback function, which is just going to console log that the server is running on port 3000. Cool. Now, all I have to do is to add an app.get. So what should happen when the user tries to go to my home page? The root route. Well, let's add our callback function. Our rec and res, and then inside our app.get, all I'm going to do for now is just to use res.send to send over some text. Let's just say server is up and running. So now let's hit save and go back to our hyperterminal, use nodemon to run our app.js.
Great Wall of China is not visible from space. और tomato vegetable नहीं fruit है तो unbelievable लगेगा. But these are facts. Just like कि Spotify Premium के subscription के लिए सिर्फ credit card नहीं debit card भी acceptable है. Subscribe करो Spotify Premium. और अगर आप हैं नए subscriber तो पाओ first month trial free. Tap the banner to know more. Monthly subscription fee applies after. Open only to users who haven't already tried Premium. Terms and conditions apply.
Back to our hyperterminal, use nodemon to run our app.js, and you can see that this is now logging from here, servers running on port 3000, and we can now go to localhost 3000 and see that our server is up and running. So it's all connected. We're now ready to get started. Now, I know that some people like to save all of this boilerplate somewhere and then just copy and paste it whenever they create a new project. But I think when you first get started working with it, it's quite nice building up a little bit of muscle memory and just typing it out every time. And this way, when something does change, you're able to react to it rather than having to go and debug it because you've copied it from somewhere. Instead of sending server is up and running, I'd really prefer to send the current weather data. In order to do that, I have to somehow make a GET request to the Open Weather Maps server and be able to fetch the data back as a JSON and parse it so I get the relevant piece of information. How do we do that? If we didn't know how to do this, then we'd probably ask our good friend Google, right? Make get request to external server with Node. The first result we get back on Stack Overflow request
और शायद उनकी पोजीशनिंग पता चल चुकी है और मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि नकुल ही थे जिन्होंने वहां पे इक्विनॉक्स को एलिमिनेट किया। आर स्पोर्ट्स कैनरी एक बार फिर से ये खिलाड़ी एंजॉय करने में बिल्कुल पीछे नहीं होता और इस वक्त गंगनम स्टाइल चलता हुआ कैनरी काफी ज्यादा खुश होना भी चाहिए क्योंकि आपने उस तरीके से विनर चिकन डिनर निकाला है। कहाँ जा रहे कैनरी, रुक जाए आपको और भी मैचेस खेलने हैं। बाहर का रास्ता कृपया करके रोका जाए, गेट बंद करा जाए। कैनरी बाहर जा रहे स्टेडियम के, बट फिलहाल के लिए वापस आते हुए अपनी टीम के साथ वापस से मिलेंगे और अगला जो मैच है उसे कंटिन्यू करेंगे।
What a showman, what an entertainer. Canary is turning out to be बहुत ही शानदार तरीके से। यार इतना कॉन्फिडेंस होना चाहिए बस जिंदगी में बेसिक कि आप अपने प्रतिद्वंदियों के सामने जाके ऐसे सेलिब्रेट कर सके एंड दैट इज मैसिव।
डांस था ये तो फिलहाल नेक्स्ट लेवल था। मेरे साथ मौजूद है ओशन और हम भी यहाँ पर वही गंगनम स्टाइल कर रहे हैं बिकॉज ये जो मजा है ये अलग लेवल पे आ रहे हैं। एंड गाइस वीडियो
to external server with Node. The first result we get back on Stack Overflow points to a package called request. And in old versions of this course, I used to point students toward this module because it's really nice and it has a really simple implementation. But as of January 2020, the request module is now deprecated. So it's basically being retired. So if you've used request before in one of your previous projects, then it will still work. But for all new students, I recommend to use a different module. And if we take a look at this blog post by Twilio, which came up actually, in fact, as the first result for our search, they're telling us that there are 5 ways of doing this. And the first way is the native way, using the standard Node library, something called the HTTP module. And in fact, they're actually using the HTTPS module, which is the secure version. But in addition, you could also use the request module, Axios, Superagent, or GOT. Now, all of these last four are external NPM packages, but I want to show you how you can do it natively. So we're going to be using the native HTTPS node module. So if we search for it, inside our node documentation, you can see that somewhere down here, there is the option to perform a GET request. And all we have to do is to get hold of the HTTPS module, to call the GET method on it, and then once we get our results back, we can either log the status code or simply just get hold of the data. This is what we're going to use in our code. So right at the top here, I'm going to create a new constant called HTTPS, and then I'm going to require this HTTPS module. And we don't actually have to install this using Node because it's one of the native Node modules, which is already bundled within our Node project. So we can simply just go ahead and use it. Inside my app.get, before I send the results back to my client, I'm going to use my HTTPS module and call the GET method. Now, the GET method is going to need a URL. If we go into Postman, where we've got our already pre-structured URL, which includes all of the parameters that we've added here, make sure that you've checked that it actually works, that you actually get back some data and everything looks like it's working. Then we can copy this entire formatted URL and then paste it into our GET method right here.
The thing about me, there's a little bit more to me. I know there's a little bit more.
Dell, discover your passions.
भाई 7 दिन पहाड़ों पर यानी नो नेटवर्क नो फोन कॉल्स सिर्फ म्यूजिक ही म्यूजिक।
ओ हेलो, नो नेटवर्क यानी नो म्यूजिक भी, समझा?
अरे Spotify प्रीमियम का मिनी है ना, इजी डाउनलोड, जस्ट चिल।
अब ऑफलाइन मोड पर भी अपने मोबाइल पर 30 से भी ज्यादा सॉन्ग्स डाउनलोड करो। Spotify Mini at just ₹25 per week. Tap the banner to know more.
Here.
Terms and conditions apply.
Now, the thing to remember about this URL, though, is it needs to have the strict formatting of the HTTPS:// and then the rest of the URL. Because even though we could take this URL, paste it into our browser, and our browser will automatically add all the necessary HTTPS, etc., it doesn't work like that when we use our Node module. We have to have this first part there. Now, you can either just paste it into your browser and then select it and copy it. And now, when you add this string, you'll see that it's automatically included that first part. Or you could simply just have typed this as well. It doesn't really matter. Now, because this URL is so long and we can't even see the beginning and end of our GET method, what I'm going to do is take this string out of the method and use a constant to hold it instead. So we'll just call that URL and set it equal to the entire string. Now I can simply pass the URL in as the first parameter, and then I can create my callback function. And I can see everything all in one line, which is brilliant. Now, this callback function is going to give us back a response. So normally when you see it written, say in the documentation, you'll see people shorten it to res. But because we've already got rec and res here, I don't want to have another res because it's kind of confusing. So I'm going to call this the full name, the response. And when we get back our response, all that I'm going to do is just log this response to see whether if this entire process of making a HTTP GET request over the internet to this URL where we're supposed to fetch some data, whether it actually works and whether we actually get something back. So now let's hit save and let's refresh our localhost 3000. Now if we go to our hyperterminal, you can see that we've gotten back a whole bunch of data, including the method of request that we made, the path that our request went to, and most importantly, the status code that we got back from the external OpenWeatherMap server. And it says 200, which basically means A-OK. So now that we've got everything working, in the next lesson, we're going to dig into our response a little bit more, and we're going to learn more about the status code.
एक महीने में 4 हफ्ते, एक हफ्ते में 7 दिन, एक दिन में 24 घंटे, एक घंटे में 60 मिनट्स, यानी एक महीने में 43,200 मिनट्स, वो भी अनइंटरप्टेड एड फ्री म्यूजिक लिसनिंग आपके हर मूड और ओकेजन के लिए। पता है कैसे? सिर्फ Spotify प्रीमियम के इंडिविजुअल प्लान से at just ₹129. Tap the banner to know more. Terms and conditions apply.
Soundtrap is the easiest way of producing music. Simply select an 808 kick, add some sizzling hi-hats, add some weirdness with this broken glockenspiel. And finally, let's pitch down and reverb this barking dog. Make a song in minutes. Use Soundtrap, an online music studio that's easy to use, highly collaborative, and works on any device. Get a 1-month free trial of Soundtrap Premium. Click the banner to claim the offer.
स्टूडेंट होने का कितना फायदा है, डिस्काउंट में जंगल सफारी और साथ में our favorite music. Babe, it's jungle. हम ऑफलाइन हैं, पर प्लेलिस्ट तो 100% डाउनलोडेड है ना।
आज ही अपना स्टूडेंट आईडी शेयर कर सब्सक्राइब करें प्रीमियम स्टूडेंट को और पाएं स्पॉटिफाई प्रीमियम के इंडिविजुअल प्लान पर 50% डिस्काउंट। साथ ही नए सब्सक्राइबर के लिए 1 मंथ फ्री ट्रायल भी। टैप ऑन द बैनर टू नो मोर। प्रीमियम स्टूडेंट ओनली, प्राइस per month after. Open only to students at accredited higher education institutions who haven't already tried premium. Terms and conditions apply. लीजिए, आपका आपकी गर्लफ्रेंड से ब्रेकअप हो गया। अब ऐसे में पार्टी म्यूजिक तो नहीं सुनोगे ना? लेकिन इसका मतलब ये भी नहीं कि पार्टी म्यूजिक प्लेलिस्ट में हो ही ना। Spotify प्रीमियम एड फ्री म्यूजिक लिसनिंग प्लेलिस्ट आपके हर मूड और ओकेजन के लिए और नए यूजर्स के लिए 1 मंथ फ्री ट्रायल के साथ। Tap the banner to know more.
Monthly subscription free applies after. Open only to users who haven't already tried premium. Terms and conditions apply.
Are all
Listen to Akdi Pakdi, Nikamma, and more such.
Now, in the last lesson, we saw how we could use the native Node HTTPS module to perform a GET request across the internet using the HTTPS protocol. Now, we passed in a URL, which is this one, and once we got a response back, we simply just logged the response. Now, if we wanted to, we can actually be more specific. We can actually log the status code that was associated with the response. So if I go back to my browser and hit enter to refresh, I'll be able to trigger my code again, and we'll be able to scroll to the bottom and see the response code that was printed. So we got 200. Now, if you're curious what 200 means, then you can head over to the MDN web docs and take a look at all the response codes that you could possibly get back from your HTTP requests. Now, they kind of fall into broad categories. The 100s are sort of informational, the 200s are usually a really good sign. The 300s refer to redirect websites, which normally you don't encounter. The 4s are interesting because they usually mean that the client or the user who's interacting with your website made some sort of error. And finally, the 5s are an error on the server. But you can actually dig into it. So for example, 200 specifically means just A-OK. The request is successful, and because we were making a GET request, then it means the resource has been fetched and it's transmitted to the message body. That is the best outcome that we could get when we're making an HTTP request to an external server. Now, however, we could be getting one of these other ones. Now, the one that you've often seen on the internet, if you've spent any time on the internet, is the 404. And this corresponds to the server that you made the request to cannot find the requested resource. resource. So basically, it's a resource not found. Now, we can trigger this quite easily by simply changing one of these paths. So instead of calling it weather, let's say we made a typo and we wrote weather instead. Now, if I hit save, go back, refresh my website, go to my hyperterminal, you can see I'm getting 404. The Open Weather Map server is basically telling me that this resource that you're looking for at this path, weather, does not exist. So let's restore our path. Now, another type of error you'll often get is when you have to authenticate yourselves with an API provider. Let's say that you had made an error in the app ID. So let's just botch our app ID by adding an extra character in front of it. Now I'm going to hit save, refresh my website. Now go back to my hyperterminal and you can see I'm getting a 401. And if we look it up, a 401 refers to an unauthorized HTTP request. So this is because we did not authenticate ourselves properly with the right app ID. So let's delete that extra character, go back and refresh, and we now get our 200. This is what we're looking for most of the time. But very often when we're testing APIs, when we're working with external servers, we're very likely to get different messages back. So when you do, have a look at the documentation on Mozilla and match it with the corresponding code to see what's happened. There's some pretty funny ones in here if you actually read it, including the error code 401, I'm a teapot. The server refuses to attempt to brew coffee with a teapot. And this is just a little remnant left over from some past April Fool's joke. Although you might one day encounter a server that actually does give you that code. Now, if you're interested in a bit of light heart entertainment, there's also the HTTP status dogs, which basically uses dogs from the internet to represent each of these codes, like 200 or 404 not found, 401 unauthorized, etc. And it's pretty hilarious to look through. Now, in addition to checking the status code, we can also tap into the response that we get back and call a method called on and search through it for some data. Now, this will correspond to the actual message body that we got back that Open Weather Map has actually sent us. So let's try to implement this method. Because our response is spelt out fully, we'll have to tap into response dot, and then we're calling the on method. And then inside the on method, we can tap into a specific moment, say when we receive some data in the response. So let's first call the response on when we receive some data, and I'm going to create a callback function that's going to contain the data that we get, and then I'm just going to log the data. Now let's hit save and go over to our website, refresh, and check out the response in our terminal. You can see that we're getting the response code 200, which means everything is working. But the data that we're printing out looks a little bit funny. It seems to be all jumbled up and we can't really make much sense of it. So what exactly is this? Well, this is actually hexadecimal code. And if we copy it and put it into a hexadecimal converter, we can convert it to text. And you can see that the text we're getting back is pretty much the beginning of the JSON. Put it in decimal code. And if we copy it and put it into a hexadecimal converter, we can convert it to text. And you can see that the text we're getting back is pretty much the beginning of the JSON that we're getting back from OpenWeatherMap that we saw earlier here. And this is just simply a different is pretty much the beginning of the JSON that we're getting back from OpenWeatherMap that we saw earlier here. And this is just simply a different way of representing that data. Now, what would be far more useful for us, though, is to actually get a JavaScript object. And we can do that by converting the data into a JavaScript object. And to do that, we will need to write json.parse. And this will turn a JSON in some sort of string format, say hexadecimal or binary or text, and then turn it into an actual JavaScript object. So inside this method, I'm going to pass our data. And now let's store this inside a constant called weather data. And let's go ahead and console log that. And now you can see that we're able to print an entire JavaScript object. So there's no strings in the keys and everything is organized as you would any other JavaScript object. We've basically taken our IKEA flat pack and we've unwrapped it and followed the instructions to recreate the 3D wardrobe, or in our case, the 3D JavaScript object using json.parse. Now, we can also go the other direction if we wanted to. Let's say that we had an object called, I don't know, let's just call it an object. And let's give it a name. Let's put my name in it. And then maybe... And then taking this object, we can use the other method from JSON, which is stringify. And when we stringify an object, it basically does the opposite. It will go ahead and turn a JavaScript object into a string. So now if I print it, you can see that it's completely flat packed like this, right? Taking up the minimum amount of space necessary. All our keys have become strings, but keeping all of the syntax that's required to be able to bring it back to life later on.
Mom, one medium pizza में 6 pieces क्यों?
क्योंकि हम भी 6 हैं, and a family that eats together stays together, like a 6-member Spotify plan.
And what about Toto?
Enjoy 6 members separate.
And this is effectively going the other direction, taking the 3D wardrobe and packing it down to a single string using that method json.stringify. Now, let me delete all of that, and I want to be able to use my weather data to pull out specific pieces of information from it, like the temperature or the description or an icon that I can use to display in my website. So how do I do this? How do I get this temperature specifically printed out? Well, because we've got basically one huge nested object, we can tap into the object, look for the main key, and then look for the temp key. So the code for that would look like this. Let's create a const called temp, and then let's tap into our weather data. The first level that we go down is this indentation, and we get to a key called main. So weather data.main, and then once we're inside the main object, then our value lives inside a key called temp. So then it's .temp. So now if I log my temp, we should be getting 5.84. So it's 5.84 degrees here in London at the moment. Now, while that wasn't very difficult, that also wasn't a very complex JSON. If we end up with a nested object, we can tap into the object, look for the main key, and then look for the temp key. So the code for that would look like this. Let's create a const called temp, and then let's tap into our weather data. The first level that we go down is this indentation, and we get to a key called main. So weather data.main, and then once we're inside the main object, then our value lives inside a key called temp. So then it's .temp. So now if I log my temp, we should be getting 5.84. So it's 5.84 degrees here in London at the moment. Here in London. Or simply now here in London at the moment. Now, while that wasn't very
मैंने रिया के लिए सीक्रेट कैंडल लाइट डिनर प्लान किया है। तेरा मोबाइल चाहिए था।
मेरा मोबाइल क्यों?
तेरे स्पॉटिफाई प्रीमियम अकाउंट से एड फ्री प्लेलिस्ट बचता है ना?
तो तू भी सब्सक्राइब कर ले।
यार मेरे पास तो क्रेडिट कार्ड ही नहीं है।
तो डेबिट कार्ड यूज कर।
That's right. Debit cards of leading banks accepted for your Spotify premium subscription, starting at $119 per
very
month.
difficult. That also wasn't a very complex JSON. If we end up with a really long JSON, sometimes it might get confusing digging through the levels and seeing how to get to each of these values. Now, I want to show you a neat trick. So earlier on, I showed you that you can install the JSON viewer awesome as a free Chrome browser extension. Once you've done that, if you head over to the API that we're calling over here, so putting this particular URL into the browser, then we get back the same data here. And if we want to access a particular piece of data, all you have to do is click on it, hover over this icon, and then click copy path. Now, this path, if I paste it, is basically the way to navigate to the piece of information that you're interested based on the object that you have. So the object we've got back is weather data. So if we write weather data dot and then paste in the path, then we get hold of the temperature. Now, if I get hold of the feels like temperature, then I can also do exactly the same thing. It becomes main.feels_like. This is a really neat tool for us to be able to work with JSONs, and I highly recommend you install it if you haven't got it already. Now, going back to our JSON, the next piece of data I want is the description of the weather. So you can either use the method of looking through it and see how you can get this description, or you can use JSON Awesome. and get the path and do what we did just now. But I want you to try and print out the weather description. So pause the video and give that a go. All right, let's create a new constant, and I'm going to call it weather description. And it's obviously going to come from our weather data JSON object. And then I'm just going to use the easy way, which is write a dot and then take my description, copy the path, and then paste it over here. So effectively what we're doing here is we're taking this entire object, we're digging into the weather object using that key, and then the weather object is actually an array. It's an array with only one item. So we get hold of that item using the 0, and then we get hold of the description by tapping into that key. And now if we console log this weather description, then we get overcast clouds being printed. So in this lesson, we looked at how to get hold
ಅರೆ ಮೇಸ್ತ್ರಿ ಅಣ್ಣ, ಮಳೆ ಬರೋ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೊರಟಿದ್ಯಾ?
ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ಇನ್ನೆಲ್ಗೆ? ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನ್ ನಡೀತಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ.
ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ಯಾ ಅಣ್ಣ? ಮಳೆಗಾಲದಲ್ಲೂ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನ್?
ಹೌದು, ನಮ್ಮ ಸಿಮೆಂಟ್ ಹಾಗೆ.
ಬಿರ್ಲಾ A1 ಕಾಂಕ್ರೀಟ್ ಫಾರೆವರ್ ಸಿಮೆಂಟ್. ಇದು ತೇವ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಯಲ್ಲೂ ವೇಗವಾಗಿ ಹೊಂದುತ್ತದೆ ಮತ್ತು ಅತ್ಯುತ್ತಮವಾದ ಭದ್ರತೆಯನ್ನು ನೀಡುತ್ತದೆ. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಇದು ಮಾಯಿಸ್ಚರ್ ಪ್ರೂಫ್ LPP ಬ್ಯಾಗ್ ನೊಂದಿಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತದೆ. ಇದರಿಂದ ಮಳೆಗಾಲದಲ್ಲೂ ನಿರ್ಮಾಣ ಮಾಡಿ ಯಾವುದೇ ಚಿಂತೆ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ. ಬಿರ್ಲಾ A1 ಕಾಂಕ್ರೀಟ್ ದ ಫಾರೆವರ್ ಸಿಮೆಂಟ್.
ಕೇಳಿದೆಯಾ? ಆದ್ರಿಂದಲೇ ನಾನು ಯಾವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತೇನೆ.
स्टूडेंट होने का कितना फायदा है? डिस्काउंट में जंगल सफारी और साथ में our favorite music. बेब, इट्स जंगल. हम ऑफलाइन हैं, पर प्लेलिस्ट तो 100% डाउनलोडेड है ना.
आज ही अपना स्टूडेंट आईडी शेयर कर सब्सक्राइब करें प्रीमियम स्टूडेंट को और पाएं स्पॉटिफाई प्रीमियम के इंडिविजुअल प्लान पर 50% डिस्काउंट. साथ ही नए सब्सक्राइबर के लिए 1 month फ्री ट्रायल भी. टैप ऑन द बैनर टू नो मोर. प्रीमियम स्टूडेंट ओनली. प्राइस per month after. Open only to students at accredited higher education institutions who haven't already tried premium. Terms and conditions apply.
hold of the data from the response and then to pass the JSON data that we get back into an actual JavaScript object. And then we saw how we can dig through our JavaScript object to get these specific pieces of data that we're interested in. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to be taking these pieces of data and using the data that we got, the temperature. So in previous lessons, we saw how we could fetch some data from an external server and then get the data in the form of a JSON and then pass it into an actual JavaScript object, which we can dig through to get the pieces of data that we want. So now that we're able to log the data that we're interested in, the next step is putting it onto our website. This will be a little bit of revision from our Node and Express modules. In order to pass the data back inside our app.get, we have to tap into our response. This is the response that our server is going to send to the client's browser. Now, in this case, the response could just be the data that we've got, right? So we could say res, which refers to this response. Now you see why I didn't want to name this res as well, right? Because it would be mightily confusing which one I'm using. So res refers to our app.get response, and the response we're going to give the browser is going to be a send method. So we're going to send the data that we got. The temperature in London is, and then we'll tag on the temp at the end here. And then maybe we'll even add a degrees Celsius. Now remember that if we run our code as it is right now, it's going to crash because we can only have one res.send in any given one of these app methods. So we can't send here and then send here because once we call send, then that's basically the end. There's no more sends going forwards. And if you do try to do that, you'll end up with an error that says something like this: cannot set headers after they're sent to the client, error HTTP headers sent, something like this. Instead, we're going to delete this previous send, hit save, and now when we refresh our website, you can see we're actually getting the data and we're displaying it in the website. The temperature in London . The temperature in London is 6.2. Degrees Celsius. Here's a question. How can we send this as a H1 instead of just a piece of text like this? Pause the video and see if you remember how to change it. All right, so we can actually write HTML in our res.send or our res.write. So all we have to do is just wrap the final string inside a H1 tag. So the H1 beginning tag and the H1 end tag. Now, if we go back and we hit refresh, then we actually get it displayed.
मान लीजिए आपका आपकी गर्लफ्रेंड से ब्रेकअप हो गया। अब ऐसे में पार्टी म्यूजिक तो नहीं सुनोगे ना? लेकिन इसका मतलब ये भी नहीं कि पार्टी म्यूजिक प्लेलिस्ट में हो ही ना।
Displayed and formatted in the way
एड फ्री म्यूजिक लिसनिंग प्लेलिस्ट आपके हर मूड और ओकेजन के लिए और नए यूजर्स के लिए 1 month फ्री ट्रायल के साथ। Tap the banner to know more.
Monthly subscription free applies after. Open only to users who haven't already tried premium. Terms and conditions apply.
that we want. Here's your challenge. See if you can remember how we can also send the weather description. So something like the weather is currently plus the weather description. But remember that we can only have one res.send because that's the end. That's the final thing that happens. So see if you remember how you can do this. Pause the video and try to complete this challenge. All right, so we know that we can only have one res.send, but we can have multiple res.writes, right? So we're going to wrap this inside a res.write, and we're going to then wrap this inside another res.write, and finally we're going to call res.send once we've written all the things that we want to send. And our weather description is probably going to go in as maybe a paragraph, or it could be a H3, depending on what it is that you want. So now when we refresh, you can see the weather is currently overcast clouds. The temperature in London is 6.25 degrees. And we've now been able to send multiple lines of HTML using our res.write in combination with our res.send. The final thing that I want to display in here is an image. And if we go back to the API for Open Weather Map, you can see that they actually have a bunch of condition codes in their API. The weather condition codes are these ones here, the ID of the weather. And they correspond to different weather conditions, whether if it's a thunderstorm or drizzle or rain or snow, etc. But we also get back an icon name. And that icon name corresponds to the weather condition as an image. And Open Weather Map actually provides all of the images for all of the icons that they send you. All you have to do is just fetch it like so. So say if the icon was 10D, then you would insert this 10D into this URL to get the image and leave everything else as it is. And the image would look a bit like this, which we can use to display into our website. So let's see if you can figure out how to get hold of the icon from our weather data. Pause the video and try to complete that challenge. All right, so it's pretty simple because we already know how to get the description. Then the icon is as easy as taking all of this and then just getting hold of the icon at the very end. Now, the alternative is, of course, you could have also just copied the path here and pasted the path in as well. But once we've gotten the name of the icon, we have to create the image URL. And this comes from our API here. And so I'm just going to copy this entire URL and paste it in here as a string. The name of the icon, we have to create the image URL. And this comes from our API. API here. And so I'm just going to copy this entire URL and paste it in here as a string. And then instead of using this part, which is the icon ID, I'm going to add it in by using string concatenation. And of course, I'm going to insert the icon that came from here.
Discover your passions.
Hey, if you're listening to this message right
Here. Now that we've got the image URL, we're going to write another res.write, and this one is going to contain a image element. So pause the video and see if you can send back to the browser an image element that will display this image URL.
Tap on the banner to know more. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, so we're going to again be using res.write. And in this case, though, we've got an image element that we're going to create. Now, images are self-closing tags, so we don't need to close off the tag. But what we do need is a source. And the source is going to go right here. So let's pass in our image URL and hit save. And now, when we refresh our website, you can see and hit save. And now, when we refresh our website, you can see the corresponding image is now picked up. Now we've got our live weather condition, temperature, and even the conditioned image being displayed in our website. And that's all thanks to us being able to get live data using an API, making a HTTP GET request to get the data as a JSON format, parsing it and fetching the specific items that we want, and then sending it back to the browser using the HTML that we want to write. Now, in the next lesson, I want to show you how we can make a post request from the website so that the user could log onto our website, type in a particular city that they're interested in, and then we can give them the actual weather for that city. So for all of that and more, I'll see you on the next lesson. In the last lessons, we've done the difficult part, which is fetching live data from the Open Weather Map API and then getting that data formatted and placed onto our website, like so. But it's a little bit boring if it just displays the weather for London, right? That's not much of a website. What if we could get the user to type in the city that they're interested in, and then we simply replace this query with whatever city they want? So like maybe Paris. So we could say, well, Paris currently has scattered clouds and it's about the same temperature. But of course, we'll have to change this and we'll have to add some sort of input to let the user be able to do this. Instead of having an entire long string here, I'm going to break down each of the parts of our URL. So I'm going to create a const called query, and I'm going to set that to equal London, at least for now. And then I'm going to delete this part here and replace it with the query. Now, additionally, I'm also going to take out my app ID, and I'm going to save that as a separate const as well, and I'll call that API key, and we'll save it under these two names, and then I can replace that with my API key, and finally I'm just going to take out the units and add it on at the end as well. So now, all we have to do to change the data that we get back is to all we have and add it on at the end as well. So now all we have to do to change the data that we get back is to update this query. So how can we do that? How do we update it? Well, if we go into our index.html, which currently is completely blank, we can start off by creating a HTML template, and our title will be called our weather app. And inside the body, all I'm going to do is add a text input. So this is going to be an input of type text, and it's going to have a name, which is called the city name, and it's not going to have any value at the moment. Now, in addition to an input, I also want to have a label, and it's the label for this particular input. So let's give it an ID, and let's call the ID the city input, and let's put city input here as well. Now our label is going to say city name, colon, hit save, and now we want to be able to render this index.html when the user calls app.get at the root route. So instead of all of this, I'm going to cut it out and I'm going to paste it down here. And I'm just going to comment out this code for now. Now our website is again quite simple. And inside our app.get, I'm going to try and send this file, index.html, over to the browser. I'm going to call res.sendFile, and then I'm going to get hold of the directory name, and I'm going to add /index.html. And hopefully when I refresh my website now, it's going to display that website, it's going to show my label and my input. So now that I'm free to type whatever it is I want in here, I need some way of sending that data, right? So I need a button in here as well. Let's go the name, go. And if I wrap all of this inside a form, then I'll be able to create a post request when the user hits this button. And that post request is ready here in the method, but the action is actually going to go to our root route. Our form is going to make a post request to this route on our server, and we would have to catch it using app.post. Then specifying the root route, which is the one that we said we would hit up over in our form, and then create our function with our rec and res. Inside here, we're just going to log post received. So now let's refresh our website. We can see our label, our input, and our submit button. Let me just write website. Our function with our rec and res. Inside here, we're just going to log post received. So now let's refresh our website. We can see our label, our input, and our submit button. Let me just write the word London in here, click go, and then go into our hyperterminal, and we can see post request received. So it's hit up our post route, and this is why we're getting that logged. But in order for us to actually get the text that the user typed into the input, we have to do a little bit more. We have to actually install another package that we've been using previously. So I'm using Control-C to exit out of NodeMon so that I see my prompt again. And I'm going to use npm to install body parser, body-parser. And body parser is the package that's going to allow me to look through the body of the post request and fetch the data based on the name of my input, which is called city name. So now let's go ahead and create a constant called body parser, which is going to require the body-parser module. And then let's get our app to use body parser. And we're going to set the URL encoded to use the extended as true. Setting. From previous modules, we've used this a few times, and this is just the necessary code for us to be able to start parsing through the body of the post request. But once we've done all of that, instead of console logging post request received, we can go one step better than that. We can say request.body. The name of the input, which is called city name, and we should now be able to console log the text that went.
Mom, one medium pizza में 6 pieces क्यों?
क्योंकि हम भी 6 हैं and a family that eats together stays together like a 6-member Spotify plan.
And what about Toto?
Enjoy 6 members separate accounts for $179 per month. Switch to Spotify Premium Family. Tap on the banner to know more. 6 premium accounts for family members under one roof. Terms and conditions apply.
And we should name of the input, which is called city name. And we should now be able to console log the text that went into that input. So let's delete the previous console log, hit save, start up our server again with nodemon app.js, and now go to refresh our website, type in London, hit go, and check our hyperterm. Terminal, .js, and now go to refresh our website for us to be able to start passing through the body of the post request. But once we've done all of that, instead of console logging post request received, we can go one step better than that. We can say request.body. The name of the input, which is called city name. And we should now be able to console log the text that went into that input. So let's delete the previous console log. Hit save. Start up our server again with nodemon app.js, and now go to refresh our website. Hit save. Type in London, hit go. go and check our hyperterminal, and you can see we're now receiving our data from our post request. Now that we've passed through the body of the request, you can see now how we can start using that as our query, right? Let's go ahead and take all of this and paste it into our post request and then uncomment it using command /. And instead of console logging the request.body.city_name, we're going to be using that, of course, as the query. So instead of having our hard-coded London, we're going to write request.body.city_name. And we can delete our console log now. So now if we hit save, go back to our website, refresh, let's type in a different one. Let's say what's the weather like in Paris.
एक महीने में 4 हफ्ते, एक हफ्ते में 7 दिन, एक दिन में 24 घंटे, एक घंटे में 60 मिनट्स, यानी एक महीने में 43,200 मिनट्स, वो भी अनइंटरप्टेड एड फ्री म्यूजिक लिसनिंग आपके हर मूड और ओकेजन के लिए। पता है कैसे? सिर्फ Spotify प्रीमियम के इंडिविजुअल प्लान से at just ₹129. Tap the banner to know more. Terms and conditions apply.
Paris. And now it sends us the weather, but of course we need to modify this text as well. So down here where it says London, let's get rid of that and let's instead add the query in here. So let's go back and let's check a different place. Let's see what is the weather like in Bali. Hit go. The temperature in Bali is 30 degrees, pretty nice. But there's currently thunderstorms, and that's what our image shows as well. So now we're able to get dynamic data based on what the user typed into the input, catch that data in our app.post, and then use that query to structure our URL and get the data for that particular location. Now we've seen all aspects of our API in use, including authentication, including paths, including queries, and we've been able to pass the JSON data we get back and send it over to the browser using our Express and Node modules. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to be taking this one step further and we're going to be building our final project, which is our newsletter email collection website, which is basically going to be a landing page that you can use to collect user emails. So for all of that and more, I'll see you. Hi guys, welcome back. This is Angela from the App Brewery, and it's a new day, which means that it's time for a new project. So in the coming lessons, we're going to be building something really exciting, or at least I'm really excited to build it with you. So far, none of our web apps that we have built have been deployed, and none of them have really been all that exciting to deploy, to be honest. But everything is going to change for the next project. So the web app that we're going to be building is a newsletter app. So I'm probably signed up to far too many newsletters, but some of them are real gems, and I really enjoy reading them. So
Babe, I saw Karan and Shreya together.
Ma'am, here's your food.
Yeah, और पता है, they were on the bike.
Ma'am, how's the food?
Good. Yeah, so I was saying.
Ma'am, anything else?
No.
Interruptions are mood spoilers, and more while they are between your favorite music. So try Spotify Premium. Upload your student ID to subscribe and get 50% off plus 1 month free for new subscribers. Tap the banner to know more. Premium student only price per month after. Open only to students at accredited higher education institutions who haven't already tried Premium. Terms and conditions apply.
लीजिए आपका आपकी गर्लफ्रेंड से ब्रेकअप हो गया। अब ऐसे में पार्टी म्यूजिक तो नहीं सुनोगे ना? लेकिन इसका मतलब ये भी नहीं कि पार्टी म्यूजिक प्लेलिस्ट में हो ही ना। Spotify प्रीमियम एड फ्री म्यूजिक लिसनिंग प्लेलिस्ट आपके हर मूड और ओकेजन के लिए और नए यूजर्स के लिए 1 month फ्री ट्रायल के साथ। Tap the banner to know more.
Monthly subscription free applies after. Open only to users who haven't already tried premium. Terms and conditions apply.
डॉली का बर्थडे आज। अपने पॉकेट मनी से सरप्राइज प्लान किया है। यस, उसकी चॉइस का केक, चॉकलेट्स और फेवरेट टॉपिंग्स वाला पिज्जा भी। और म्यूजिक वो भी सॉर्टेड है आज के लिए। मोबाइल पर नॉन स्टॉप एड फ्री म्यूजिक लिसनिंग, वो भी लिरिक्स के साथ ऑन स्पॉटिफाई मिनी।
One time plans for a day or a week. मोबाइल पर अनलिमिटेड ad-free music listening. एक मोबाइल डिवाइस पर 30 song downloads with lyrics. Try Spotify Mini today at just 25 rupees per week. Terms and conditions apply. मीडियम पिज्जा में 6 पीसेस क्यों?
क्योंकि हम भी 6 हैं and a family that eats together stays together like a 6-member Spotify plan.
And what about Toto?
Enjoy 6 members separate accounts for $179 per month. Switch to Spotify Premium Family. Tap on the banner to know more. 6 premium accounts for family members under one roof. Terms and conditions apply.
ब्रेकिंग न्यूज, रैप के बादशाह और मेलोडी की रानी के बीच नो डिस्टर्बेंस, नो इंतजार बिटवीन हिप हॉप एंड इंडी पॉप, फॉरगेट ब्रेक्स बिटवीन 60s and 90s romantic hits.
No more ad breaks in your music listening. Get ad-free music listening with Spotify Premium. And if you are a new subscriber, then enjoy 1 month free subscription. Tap on the banner to know more. Monthly subscription fee applies after. Open only to users who haven't already tried Premium. Terms and conditions apply.
एक महीने में 4 हफ्ते, एक हफ्ते में 7 दिन, एक दिन में 24 घंटे, एक घंटे में 60 मिनट्स, यानी एक महीने में 43,200 मिनट्स, वो भी अनइंटरप्टेड एड फ्री म्यूजिक लिसनिंग, आपके हर मूड और ओकेजन के लिए। पता है कैसे? सिर्फ Spotify प्रीमियम के इंडिविजुअल प्लान से at just ₹129. Tap the banner to know more. Terms and conditions apply.
babe, I saw Karan and Shreya together.
Ma'am, here's your food.
Yeah, और पता है? They were on the bike.
Ma'am, how's the food?
Good. Yeah, so I was saying.
Ma'am, anything else?
No.
Interruptions are mood spoilers, and more while they are between your favorite music. So try Spotify Premium. Upload your student ID to subscribe and get 50% off plus 1 month free for new subscribers. Tap the banner to know more. Premium student only price per month after. Open only to students at accredited higher education institutions who haven't already tried Premium. Terms and conditions apply.
So guys, पार्टी की सब अरेंजमेंट्स पूरी हैं. म्यूजिक कौन प्ले करेगा?
मैं.
तू रहने दे भाई. तेरे गानों की क्वालिटी इतनी गिरी हुई है कि बजाता है रैप सॉन्ग्स, सुनाई देते हैं सैड सॉन्ग्स.
डोंट वरी, मैंने Spotify का प्रीमियम सब्सक्रिप्शन ले लिया है, जहां मुझे मिला है हाई क्वालिटी साउंड और स्टूडेंट आईडी अपलोड करने पर 1 मंथ फ्री ट्रायल और प्रीमियम इंडिविजुअल प्लान पर 50% डिस्काउंट.
Premium for student only. Price month after. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, where are you, da? Looking for cabs, bro. You're literally 20 minutes away. Bro, rush hours, search price, no rides. You know the scene. Wait, found a ride for you. Send a screenshot. Hop in 2. Wait, how? I booked it on mine. Simple, plus no surge here. Now please leave.
Don't change your plans, change the way you travel. Pay no surge and get your rides fast. On Mine, India's first super app.
Breaking news. रैप के बादशाह और मेलोडी की रानी के बीच no disturbance, no इंतजार between hip hop and indie pop. Forget breaks between 60s and 90s romantic hits.
No more ad breaks in your music listening. Get ad-free music listening with Spotify Premium. And if you are a new subscriber, then enjoy 1 month free subscription. Tap on the banner to know more. Monthly subscription fee applies after. Open only to users who haven't already tried Premium. Terms and conditions apply. If you are listening to this message right now, आप शायद अपना Spotify Premium account top up करना भूल गए हैं। ये reminder ad चाहे जितना भी छोटा क्यों ना हो, you don't need it in between your favorite music. So top up now and enjoy uninterrupted music.
Enjoy ad-free music listening on mobile with the Spotify Premium Mini Plan. Starting at just ₹7 per day. Tap on the banner to know more. Terms and conditions apply.